There's a lot of surprises and disappointments throughout the 2022 Red Sox season, and we're going to talk about all those today.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Massachusetts Pirates team insider Jake Ignaszewski, and I'll be riding solo today, as is Lauren Willen's birthday. So if you're hearing this, on Wednesday, make sure to go over and tell her happy birthday. It was her birthday on Tuesday, so even if it's late, I know that she'll greatly appreciate it. But we're going to be diving into the surprises and disappointments throughout the 2022 season. Obviously, it was a roller coaster, a lot of different emotions, but there's a lot of positives that came from throughout the season, and also some things that, frustrated us fans a little bit. And we're going to get into those with the disappointing sort of moments throughout the season. But starting off, we're going to look at some of the surprises. And I'm going to start off with a guy who I am so happy that he was finally able to show his full potential, and injuries didn't really derail his season. That's Christian Arroyo. He's somebody who we've seen throughout his time with the Red Sox thus far. It's either he gets COVID or he gets some sort of unfortunate injury. We saw last year when he was playing first base, the runner stepped on his ankle and he was out for a little bit. And he's gotten COVID like a billion times or so at this point. But he was finally able to get a lot of playing time throughout this year, whether it was playing in the infield. He also had some time out in right field as well. And, he's somebody that ever since coming to the Red Sox, he's just brought such a great energy and personality, not only to the field, but to the clubhouse as well. And it was also great to, see at the start of this 2022 season when the Sox signed Trevor Story, and essentially Arroyo was put in a situation where he did not have a position. And he was all up for playing wherever he could to help the team. And I think that is the perfect mindset to go about it, especially, if you're a role player, being able to be open-minded to playing multiple different positions and doing everything possible to just help the team win. And those are the types of players that you want on your team. And we saw Arroyo really come up big for the Sox, especially down the stretch in the second half. He actually played a career high 87 games during this season and ended up batting 286 with 6 home runs and 36 RBIs. And he did a lot better job this season having plate discipline and finding ways to get on base. We saw last year he finished with 44 strikeouts and 43 hits, but this season he pretty much turned into a completely different hitter, a lot more productive and consistent. Ultimately ended up finishing with 80 hits and 49 strikeouts. So I'm very curious to see how the Red Sox really use him in 2023, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in a very similar role, sort of like a Brock Holt utility guy, to where they can just plug him in when they need him. And especially as we see them wanting to have a little bit of a revolving door at DH, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some opportunities in that spot in the lineup, just so then the Sox are able to utilize his ability to get on base. And also, if he hasn't played in a little bit, they're able to get him some playing time as well. But he's somebody who has really intrigued me throughout the year. And also, I think fans really need to be excited to see how he continues to develop throughout his time with the team. And another guy who really just came out of nowhere and was the most reliable pitcher out of the Red Sox bullpen all throughout the year, and that's John Schreiber. We saw him get called up on May 6th and stay on the roster for the remainder of the season. But we saw him get a little bit overused later on in the season. And this is something that sort of, concerned me as well as some other Red Sox fans, that they were really going to, either get him hurt or overuse him to the point where he's not as effective. And, we saw the more that they used him, it was sort of to clean up the messes that maybe some other pitchers made during the game. But that's one of the biggest reasons why Lauren and I always talk about it. You got to have multiple options that in that bullpen to be able to clean things up. You can't always look to one guy. And, we saw that sort of come about not only with Schreiber, but with Whitlock, not only this past season, but in 2021. And we could also, compare Schreiber's journey to the Red Sox and flourishing when the moment seemed fit, sort of like what would happen with Garrett Whitlock. And, hearing Chaim Bloom's thoughts, he actually said when talking about looking for bullpen arms during this offseason, he mentioned he's going to look for other guys like John Schreiber, guys who really have these hidden talents and haven't really been looked at as highly regarded arms so far in their career, but are able to really get guys out effectively. And we saw obviously with Schreiber's arm slot with that little bit of the sidearm, he just looked unstoppable, especially when his pitches were on. We saw him finish pitching 64 games with a 2.22 ERA with 74 strikeouts over 65 innings. And we saw him not only in sort of a setup role, but also close out a few games. He had 22 total holds with 8 saves. And so I'm very curious to see where the Red Sox really use him next season. Hopefully it's more of a defined role and it's not sort of, let's just slot him in here to clean things up, and gets to the point where they start to overuse him. Because, that's something that I didn't mention before is the whole overusing concern sort of stemmed from what the Red Sox did with Matt Barnes. We saw in 2021, Barnes was a AL All-Star to start the first half. And then during the second half, he was so tired and worn out that it ultimately ended up hindering his performance because, we saw he was way overworked during that first half. So I hope that the Red Sox are able to see sort of where they might have gone wrong with Schreiber at the end of the season and sort of fix that for next season. So then they're able to use him more effectively. But another bullpen arm that really came out of nowhere as well is a friend of the pod, Zach Kelly. He's somebody who throughout majority of the 2022 season pitched down in Worcester and was one of the most reliable arms down there. Had around a mid 200 ERA and also kept that same sort of dominance up in the majors with the Red Sox for the majority of the time that he was with the team later on in the season. Ultimately ended up finishing appearing in 13 games with a 3.95 ERA with 11 strikeouts. But honestly, that with that 3.95 ERA, it was down in that mid to 200, low 200 threshold ERA for majority of his time with the Red Sox. And I think what really hurt him was his final outing against the Blue Jays when he allowed 3 runs on 5 hits. But he was really effective in his short stint, and I wouldn't be surprised if we really see him get an opportunity to start the season for the Red Sox in 2023. He is 27, but he's somebody who has a lot of room to still grow, and I think should definitely get a shot from the small sample size that we saw from Zach Kelly during September. And another guy who really came out of nowhere as well is Brayan Bello. I think with what Brayan Bello did, especially during his final 6 starts, ended up finishing with a 2.59 ERA over those final starts. He pitched himself into earning a rotation spot for this next season. Now, we saw him really struggle when he first came up, ended up mustering an 8.82 ERA over his first 4 career starts. And we saw hitters really smack the ball all over the place off of Baio, but he really came into his own, found a way to be very effective. His control got a lot better. He figured out ways to, attack hitters, the more experience that he got in the majors. And then we also heard that Rich Hill was teaching him his curveball. And we know from watching Rich Hill throughout 2022 that, low 60s, mid 60s curveball that just drops right in there. And, Baio gets that and adds that to his repertoire. Oh my God, he's going to be unstoppable. And when you mix that with his sinker as well, that, can come in there sometimes at 85, then he can get it up to there to, low to mid 90s. I mean, he has so much more room to grow as well. He's only 23 years old, and we even heard Pedro Martinez talk about that this is a future Cy Young winner, and he reminds him a lot of, Pedro in his younger days. So very intriguing prospect for the Red Sox. He came, to the team due to injuries, but also was ranked, their number 1 pitching prospect. So, a lot of people had in their minds that he was somebody who could be very effective up in the majors, but it was tough to, have any confidence after we saw him struggle during his first during his first few starts, but very excited to see how he continues to develop and how the Red Sox really use him in their rotation next season. And then another guy who also got the opportunity to show what he has and got a lot of playing time due to some injuries, as we saw in July as well as in August, is Rob Refsnyder. The outfielder started playing 44 games with Worcester and also Portland a little bit before getting called up. And once we saw him get called up, he just really showed that he belongs in the majors and was one of the best hitters for the Red Sox throughout his time with the team. Ended up appearing in 57 total games in the majors last season and ended up finishing with a 307 batting average, 6 home runs, 21 RBIs. And he actually had the 4th highest OBP on the team over the final 30 days of the season. He was somebody who seemed like anytime he needed to get on base, he always found consistent ways to get ducks on the pond. And, we also saw him have one of the most memorable moments of the 2022 season with that great walk-off to cap off the comeback against the Texas Rangers. And he just was also somebody that, played with a lot of passion and a lot of fire as well. Even though he was a little bit quiet, in like the dugout and didn't really show too much of his emotions, when the moment mattered most, we saw him really use his energy to amp the team up. And I'm really curious to see how the Red Sox utilize Refsnyder, next season. He does go into his arbitration year, but I know that they did sign him on a minor league contract. So I'm curious to see if they do bring him back. And now there's the whole sort of question on, could we see Refsnyder be the 4th outfielder, or maybe because Tommy Pham's the mutual option, could we see that happen? But then it obviously came out that Pham's mutual option is actually $12 million, not $6 million. So a lot of different decisions that Chaim Bloom needs to make. But, in my opinion, Refsnyder was one of the biggest surprises throughout this season. And another guy who the last one, in my opinion, who is one of the biggest surprises is Michael Wacha. Throughout this year, Lauren and I have talked about Wacha being essentially the ace for this rotation. And, I've continuously said that I was so wrong about this signing. At the start of the year, it really didn't make any sense to me for the Red Sox giving a guy who had a mid 500 ERA last year with the Rays, a $7 million contract, and, really trusting him to be a mid starter and reliable starter in this Red Sox rotation. But that he ended up finishing with a 11-2 record with a 3.32 ERA over 23 starts. And even though he had missed some time due to some injuries, was still so effective anytime he went out on the mound. We did see him struggle a little bit in his final 2 starts, ended up allowing 6 earned runs in his second to last start, and then 5 earned runs in his final start with the team. But I fully see the Red Sox trying to re-sign Wacha to a multi-year deal. Wouldn't be surprised. I mentioned in the past, 2-year, maybe $13 to $14 million a year. He did get 7 this past year, and so doubling his contract just with how effective he was throughout this season, that would not be surprising whatsoever. But also, I wouldn't be surprised either if, a lot of other teams go after him. But it has been said in the last few months that there is mutual interest between Wacha and the Red Sox. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is my surprises for the 2022 season. We're going to be talking about our disappointments going into our second segment. But if you have any surprises that I might have missed, let us know over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. But before we get into our second segment, I just want to talk to you about Rhone. So I don't know about you, but it's such a pain for me sometimes to wear dress shirts. They're super uncomfortable, they're tight, and sometimes they're never my size. And it's always a hassle, having to change clothes for different activities and, also not only being able to look good, but being able to feel good. And something with Rhone that I think that they do a great job is that they radically reinvented and stepped up to the challenge to make a comfortable dress shirt. Their computer shirt is the most comfortable and breathable and flexible shirt known to man. And here's why. They have a comfortable 4-way stretch fabric that provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way with a commute to work. So it's time to feel confident with your wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. And with Rhone's wrinkle release technology, their wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. And with Gold Fusion, their anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. And so the commuter shirt gets you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to rhone.com/locked on and use promo code locked on to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head over to rhone.com/locked on. It's time to find your corner office comfort. So now talking about the disappointments of the 2022 Red Sox season, there's a lot of them. And a lot of them came from, some of the younger guys and some of the returning players from last season that we saw really make a huge impact and were some of the biggest reasons why the Red Sox were so successful last year and were ultimately only 2 wins away from making it to the World Series. But we're going to start off with one of the hottest hitters in the second half of the 2021 season, and that's Bobby Dalbec. He was somebody, going into the year, Lauren and I, put a lot of stock and also belief into Bobby Dalbec that he was going to take the next step. We saw him really struggle at the first half of the 2021 season. It was really his first stint of having the opportunity to be the starting first baseman for the Red Sox, and especially with Tristan Casas sort of breathing down his neck, he sort of needed to show why he deserved to be on this team fast. And especially with how efficient he was during the second half, he was one of the best hitters after the All-Star break last season. There's a lot of people who had so much confidence in Dalbeck to, be able to be not only that power hitter that we saw him be, going up through the ranks of the Red Sox farm system, but also a little bit during his first few games with the Sox, but also be able to get on base consistently. That was one of the biggest things that Dalbec struggled with throughout the year, was striking out way too much and not being able to get on base as much as, a regular good major league player should be able to do. And we actually saw this season him struggle even more. His OBP decreased from 298 to 283 from last year to this year. And he ultimately ended up finishing with a 215 batting average, 12 home runs, 39 RBIs over 117 games. But interestingly enough, his strike rate actually was very similar from last year to this year. He struck out 37.4% of the time last year, and it was 37.2% of the time this past season. But something that was intriguing is that he did walk more this year compared to last year, but still was nowhere close to what the Red Sox wanted out of the production at first base. And it was sort of first base position was sort of a revolving door throughout the year, and was one of the weaknesses of not only the Red Sox defensively, but also offensively as well. And we saw Dalbec really struggle, not only offensively, but also defensively, to be able to be a productive first baseman. And, that's one of the biggest reasons why the Red Sox, traded for Eric Hosmer, also called up Franchy Cordero to sort of platoon with Dalbec because they felt like maybe that would help, but it still didn't do anything. And, we saw Dalbec ultimately get sent down to the minors at the end of the season. And that was sort of an indication that the Red Sox are starting to move on from, the Bobby Dalbec days to the Tristan Casas days. And I'm very curious to see what team Bobby Dalbec is on next year. I don't think it will be with the Red Sox. I do see them trying to trade him, sort of like a whole Michael Chavis situation where, if you're not a part of our future, we're going to trade you for a piece that is going to be a part of our future. But it's upsetting to see, especially, with how intriguing of production Dalbec really gave during not only the second half of 2021, but also during the spring training as well. And, I always joke, I think Bobby Dalbec is the best spring training hitter that there is in the majors. And, he'll go out there and lead spring training in home runs. But, once the season starts, something clicks in his mind where everything completely changes. And another guy who, I was really hoping would be able to take the next step this next season was Jaren Duran, who, we saw last year when he first got his small stint in the majors. After all that hype throughout the year of sort of what we saw from Casas this past year of, everybody hoping and praying that Dalbec would be called up so we could finally see, this exciting, fast center fielder, who's not only has speed, but also has power. And, Duran showed us a little bit of some intriguing play when he first got caught up. We also, saw his ability to be a really good leadoff hitter when he first got his footing with the Red Sox this past season. But then we not only saw his performance struggle, but also his performance off the field as well. He used his mouth a little bit too much, in my opinion. There was that comment where he said, if you're not going to believe in us now during October, don't believe in us then. And then we also saw him, miss that awful play where it was an inside the park grand slam, and especially when he was going back and forth with the media and not really taking accountability and really showing that he's still very immature. It was unfortunate to see a guy really publicly, show that he's not ready to be a major league player, and have sort of all that embarrassment throughout the year. And we also heard that he had struggled a little bit with some mental health issues. And Lauren and I always talk about it's very important to look at people as human beings, but at the same time, Jaren Duran really needs to be accountable of not only his play on the field, but also off the field as well. And, he's accountable for his maturity. He's accountable for how he carries himself. And you're a professional baseball player, so you got to carry yourself like that. And, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we saw Kike Hernandez get the $10 million contract that we saw him get for next season, is that the Red Sox don't see Duran maybe as like the immediate center fielder or even the future center fielder, because we also saw defensively he had a lot of trouble being able to track down balls out there in center field. And who knows really how productive of a major league player he is, as the Red Sox have given him 2 different opportunities to show that he belongs, and he just has not been able to step up to the plate and show that. And I brought up Kike Hernandez as somebody who, is going to be in that center field slot next season, but he was somebody who also missed a lot of time with injuries this past year. And it was tough for me to put him on this list of disappointments, but he was. We saw how legendary he was in the playoffs. He really put up an incredible performance, something that, we have never really seen before, especially during that playoff run that the Red Sox had last year in 2021. Kike looked unstoppable, and anytime he stepped up to the plate, he would either hit a home run or he would get a huge clutch hit that would ultimately really help the Red Sox out to score runs. And we just didn't see that this past year. Obviously, like, injuries definitely played a factor in that, but ended up finishing with a 222 batting average with 6 home runs, 45 RBIs over 93 games. And we just saw him really struggle to get on base, not only when he was on the field, and especially during April, he was batting, sub 200 for majority of that month, and also May as well. And, I tried to keep my confidence and think that things were going to get better, but he just continued to struggle throughout the year. So hopefully he's able to use the offseason to not only recover from some of the injuries that we saw him have throughout this year, but also be able to learn and figure out what went wrong throughout this year, especially offensively. So then he's able to fix those for this next season. But defensively, he's one of the best fielders on the Red Sox throughout this past season, not only in center field, but also at second base. And that's the nice thing that he brings, is that versatility in the field. But somebody who doesn't bring really any versatility whatsoever in the field, but, still had a little bit of a disappointing season at the plate, was JD Martinez. And it's tough to really see JD struggle as much as he did throughout this season, especially in a year that could be his last time playing for the Boston Red Sox. He had a lot of success early in the season, but man, did it dip really bad in the second half. Looking at his pre-All-Star batting average, it was up at 302, and then we see post All-Star break 233, and it was tough because he was somebody, throughout his time with the Red Sox, was that guy in the middle of the order that you could really rely on, that big bat that, when ducks were on the pond, you put your trust in JD Martinez to be able to score runs and be able to come up clutch when the Red Sox needed it in that moment, but just couldn't do that. It seemed like any time, especially in the later half of the season, when there was runners on base, JD either grounded into a double play, flew out, or just squandered the situation. And, it was really tough to see, the decline of him maybe aging, or, he also mentioned that, there was some mechanics issues that he noticed. And that's something that, he said to Rob Bradford at the end of the season, he saw something that hadn't been working since 2019, and he's going to fix it during this offseason. So we could potentially see JD Martinez come out next year and be a whole new hitter, hit 20 home runs, 30 home runs. But that's something that, we also saw him really struggle with was his home run production. Only was able to muster 16 and end up hitting 2 in his final game of the season. But he only had 3 home runs for majority of the second half, and that's just not somebody that you can rely on to be your big bat to come up clutch in the middle of the order. And so, I'm so grateful. Every Red Sox fan is so grateful for what JD Martinez did for the Red Sox throughout his time during his contract. It was definitely well worth it, but it was unfortunate that he had to end his potential time with the Red Sox this way that we saw him do during this season. He did do a very good job of smacking doubles, ended up being tied for third in the MLB with 43 doubles. But at the end of the day, that's not going to help you be able to score runs. It will at some points, but the Red Sox just really need JD Martinez to be a lot more consistent and like the guy he's been throughout his career with the team. But that is it for our surprises and disappointments of the 2022 season. As I mentioned before, if you have any other comments or if you think that, maybe I missed somebody, go over and let us know over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. You can follow us over there. But going into our final segment of this episode of the Locked On Red Sox podcast, I just want to take a second to talk to you about Built Bar. So have you tried Built Bar Puffs yet? If not, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Get ready. It's deliciously covered cookie dough and is also covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. And it's pretty crazy to think that, this bar not only tastes so good, but is so good for you. They only have 160 calories in them with a whopping 15 grams of protein. And so, I use Built Bars not only just if I need a snack or before a workout or just to fill me up late before night. So then, I'm not super duper hungry. I need to get a midnight snack or anything like that. But you can go over to built.com right now and get 15% off your order using Locked On 15. That's built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off of your order. But we greatly appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of the Locked On Red Sox podcast. And as I mentioned before, follow us over on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. You can also follow myself on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy. My co-host, Lauren, it's 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. And if you didn't hear me before at the start of this episode, it was Lauren's birthday yesterday. So make sure to go and wish her a happy birthday. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning into the Locked On Red Sox podcast. We're still going to be posting 5 days a week, even though the Sox aren't playing. It's still baseball season, so we're still going to be talking about and reflecting on the year and also bringing on some great guests. Get ready for the next 2 days. We have some very exciting guests coming on. So look out on Twitter if you want to get involved with some of those episodes. Something that we like to do with the guests is, I'll put out and let you know what guests we're going to be having and if there's any topics you want us to talk about. And, we usually use your comments or your questions within the episode because we try to do everything possible to get the audience involved. But as always, we hope that everybody has a great rest of their day, and we'll see you and talk to you tomorrow. We'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox.